Hello, class. I ended the Macbeth 5-1 to 5-5 video a little abruptly. I was having issues with the curtain behind me. The good thing is you could see the screen quite clearly. I think my face was a little blurred. Sorry about that. I'm back in the rocker. I'm back in the rocker again. I switched to the front room. So I want to pick up with where I left off on 5-5. And you'll notice I've got a few Simpson clips queued up so we can have a little fun with Simpsons Shakespearean parodies and satires, if you would. So she should have died hereafter. There would have been such a time for the word. Okay, so back to the Macbeth speech here, right? Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusky death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Now, this is very interesting because we see his nihilism apparent here with this notion of the nothingness. Now, the messenger comes in to let him know that I looked toward Burnham and methought the wood began to move. Macbeth immediately, right? Don't shoot the messenger. Well, yeah, he wants to, right? The messenger says, let me endure your wrath if it be not so. And Macbeth says, if you're lying to me, I'm going to hang you up to a tree till you starve to death. Again, we see his psychotic behavior as evidence of his psychosis and the things that he says, the way he acts. Now, this is very interesting. Remember our logical fallacy equivocation, right? He says, right, if thy speech be soft, I care not if thou dost for me as much I pull in resolution and begin to doubt the equivocation of the fiend that lies like truth. Remember, equivocation is when you shift the meaning of words to conceal, to obfuscate, another one of our writing logically, thinking critically terms. The witches said, till Burnham would come to Dunsinea, and he thinks there's no way a forest is going to come to the castle. Well, they chop the branches down and they're using them as camouflage. The second equivocation of the witches is that none of woman born will harm Macbeth. And as we know, Macduff was a C-section. And he even says, right, I doubt the equivocation of the fiend that lies like truth. And that's what equivocation is. You take a falsehood and you try to make it appear true. It's a form, in some ways, of deceitfulness or duplicity, right? And again, he's kind of resigned. Remember, he said, I've supped full with horrors. Even the death of his wife doesn't startle him, right? He says, blow wind, come rack, at least we'll die with harness on our back. Now we get the report from Malcolm and Macduff's side, right? Now let's get to the final scene. Macbeth enters, right? We see he's still very, very stubborn, right? He says, I must fight the course. What's he that was not born of woman, such a one am I to fear or none, right? Seward comes in. They fight. He kills young Seward, right? And he says, thou wast born of woman, but swords I smile at, weapons laugh to scorn, brandished by man that's of woman born. Again, look at his hubris, right? Rather than considering himself to be lucky, right? He's extremely arrogant. So as we continue along here, Macduff comes in, they fight. We'll skip ahead here. As we know, Macduff is able to get his revenge, right? Right, he could turn, hellhound, turn. Macbeth says, of all men else I have avoided thee, but get thee back. My soul is too much charged with blood of thine already. Right? And Macduff says, I have no words. My voice is in my sword. Ooh, what a cool thing to say. Thou bloodier villain than terms can give thee out. and they fight. Macbeth then says, "Thou losest labor, as easy mayest thou the entrenched air with thy keen sword impresses make me bleed." Right? Let fall thy blade on vulnerable crests. I bear a charmed life which must not yield to one of woman born. I mean, talk about hubris personified, right? And again, it's the witch's equivocation that is giving him this false sense of confidence. And Macduff says, right? Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. He was a cesarean. So we see here, right? Macbeth says, "Accursed be that tongue that tells me so, for it hath cowed my better part of man. And be these juggling fiends no more believed, that palter with us in a double sense, that keep the word of promise to our ear, and break it to our hope. I'll not fight with thee." And what does Macduff say? "Then yield thee, coward." And then Macbeth says, "I will not yield," to kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet. And he says, "Lay on, Macduff, and damn him be the first that cries hold enough." So they fight. Um, and essentially, Macbeth embraces the challenge. And as you know, Macduff returns to the castle with Macbeth's head. Um, we'll skip ahead here to the final speech of Malcolm, which in some ways tries to establish some sort of order at the conclusion. But we know the witches are still out there, and all they have to do, if one is going to be guilty of the post hoc fallacy or false cause, is make a suggestion, and the human beings like Macbeth take it for truth. So as we move forward here, the usurper's head, Macduff comes in with his head. The time is free. Hail, King of Scotland, to Malcolm, right? Everybody hails Malcolm. And now look what he says: "We shall not spend a large expense of time before we reckon with your several loves and make us even with you. My thanes and kingsmen henceforth be earls, first that ever Scotland in such an honor named." So he rewards people just like his father did. "What's more to do, which would be planted newly with the time, as calling home our exiled friends abroad that fled the snares of watchful tyranny." Right? Let's bring everybody back, because now Scotland is not under Macbeth's tyrannical rule. "Producing forth the cruel ministers of this dead butcher and his fiend-like queen, who, as 'tis thought, by self and violent hands took off her life. Thus, and what needful else that calls upon us, by the grace of grace, we will perform in measure, time, and place. So thanks to all at once, and to each one whom we invite to see us crowned at Scone." So again, we see there's some sort of semblance of order. We learn Lady Macbeth took her own life, but justice has been restored, and the true rightful heir is in possession of the crown. However, can we trust this newfound order with the witches still afoot, right? And hovering, right? Hover through the fog and filthy air. What's fair is foul, and foul is fair. Hover through the fog and filthy air. They're still around. So that being said, I'll put the links here. There's Homer, Macbeth. Then there's a Macbeth. They say Macbeth because it's supposed to be bad luck. There's all sorts of superstitions. Again, a superstition is a post hoc fallacy or false cause, that if you say Macbeth in the theater, it'll be bad luck. And then there's also a Simpsons Hamlet. What I am going to do, though, is just play real quick the first Simpsons Macbeth. You can watch the bad luck one. You can Google Simpsons Hamlet, but this is the tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow famous soliloquy that this video started with. Enjoy. Oh, sorry, live learning. That's the Shakespeare one. That's the Hamlet one. Okay, here we are. Here we go. So, what's part of the reason why I wanted to share this with y'all as well. Um, when you think about cultural criticism as we move forward for essay 4, you get to pick from the types of criticisms and theories you want to focus on, and one of them is cultural criticism. And what a cultural critic would say is that modern interpretations are just as valuable and maybe even more so valuable, and that people can learn from a Simpsons adaptation of Macbeth just as much as they could learn from the Shakespearean original text, because it's all about the value that a culture uh, gives to a document, a piece of literature, a work of art, what have you, and that those standards, if you would, and the criteria for evaluating a work of art, such as a work of literature, a movie, a commercial, they are flexible and fluid, and they change with time. So a cultural critic might say that a tweet is just as valuable as a poem, and an Instagram post is just as reflective of the human experience, etc. So for essay 4, you have a lot of options in terms of if you want to make comparisons, and or maybe use contrast and analyze cartoons or non-traditional sources of literature, obviously movies, TV shows, plays. I've gotten people comparing and contrasting Hamlet with Sons of Anarchy, Macbeth with Walter White of Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones with Macbeth, Othello and the women of Sex in the City, because the female characters in Othello, there's like a really naive one, and then there's one that's a little bit more promiscuous, if you would, like Amelia in Othello. So you've got a lot of options, and I wanted to share how, notice how Marge is the ghost who kind of appears to him and eggs him on and tells him good job. I almost think she's kind of in a Lady Macbeth witch-like moment, if you would, because remember, Lady Macbeth becomes part of the witches when she unsexes herself and has to be filled with evil spirits. So I hope you found the Macbeth ideas interesting, and I held your attention. Let me know if you have any questions. And as you look forward to the final essay, essay 4, remember that cultural criticism is a possible strategy and theory to focus on. Thanks for watching and listening, and hope to hear from you soon if you have any questions.